All right, so today we're diving into something that's absolutely crucial for anyone trying to navigate, like today's work, world,
Hmm.
leading virtual
You're
teams.
everywhere now.
It really is. And for this deep dive,
Yeah.
we're taking you to Argentina, to their tech scene.
Oh, interesting.
You might be thinking, Argentina, what's that got to do with me?
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
hold on to your hats, folks, because we've got our hands on a master's thesis all about successfully leading virtual teams.
Okay.
And let me tell you, this isn't some dusty old research paper.
No.
It is absolutely packed with insights that are relevant no matter where you are in the world.
I agree. And it's especially fascinating because it really highlights how the global work landscape is changing, you know? And Argentina is this unique case study.
Yeah. And speaking of unique, get this. Argentina's tech scene is kind of a paradox.
Yeah. Oh, they're not exactly leading the charge when it comes to automation
Right.
compared to some other countries.
Yeah.
But, and this is a big but, their software industry is booming.
Wow.
I mean, seriously, booming. It's like this jungle of startups and tech companies, all with these teams spread out across the globe.
I see. So that's where this thesis comes in.
Exactly. It dives right into this unique situation
Okay.
and pulls out some really, really useful stuff.
Like what?
For instance, remember that thing, the fourth industrial revolution that everyone's always going on about?
Oh, how could we forget? It's kind of a big deal.
Right, exactly. This massive, like, wave of technological change, right?
Yeah.
AI, automation, the whole shebang.
Right, right.
And it's impacting pretty much every corner of the world.
It's not just Silicon Valley anymore.
It's true, and that's why I think this thesis is so relevant.
Yes.
Even though it's focused on Argentina, the things it uncovers about leading virtual teams in this, like, rapidly changing world, it applies everywhere.
It really does. And here's where it gets even more interesting. This thesis didn't just focus on all the techie stuff.
Oh.
They dug deep into the human side of things.
Which honestly is often overlooked.
Exactly. They actually surveyed leaders in Argentina's virtual tech world
Okay.
to find out what skills they felt were most important for success.
Gotcha.
And get this, the results, not what you'd expect at all.
Really?
So you think in the tech world especially, right, that like coding skills or
Yeah.
knowing the latest software,
Yeah.
like the most important thing.
Cool.
But this thesis found that the top skills in Argentina's virtual teams, at least,
Yeah.
were all about people skills.
Really?
Seriously.
Yeah.
Strategic thinking, communication, empathy.
Mm.
All that stuff we kind of lump under soft skills.
Right, right.
They absolutely blew the technical stuff out of the water.
Huh. See, that makes perfect sense to me, though.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because in a virtual setting, you don't have those everyday interactions, you know?
Right.
It's not like you're chatting by the coffee machine or anything. Or just doing a quick check-in at someone's desk.
Yeah.
Building trust and just making sure everyone's on the same page.
Right.
It takes a much more, I don't know, deliberate approach from the leader, you know?
Hey, totally.
You can't just pop by and see how things are going.
Exactly. You have to, like, create that connection remotely.
Exactly.
It's like the thesis said, even in tech, it's the human element that makes or breaks these virtual teams.
It's so true.
And speaking of human elements, things get even more interesting when you look at who's leading these teams.
Okay.
Because millennials, they are stepping up.
Yes. The generation everyone loves to talk about.
Right. And for good reason in this case.
Yeah.
The thesis found that a huge percentage of these virtual team leaders, millennials.
Really?
And here's the thing. They're not just like throwing around big bonuses to motivate their teams.
Interesting.
They're using a totally different playbook.
I mean,
So instead of just like financial rewards, right?
yeah.
These millennial leaders, they're leaning into something much more, I don't know, intrinsic,
Oh,
like consistent positive feedback.
interesting. So, like, tell me more about that. Like, why is that so significant?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Because I can see how that would be, you know, good for morale and stuff.
sure.
But, like, is it really, you know?
Yeah, so it ties directly into what we know about millennial work styles and their values, right?
Really?
This is a generation that really thrives on growth and like open communication
Right.
and feeling valued for their contributions.
Sure. Here.
They want to know that they're making a difference
Of course.
and regular feedback.
Yeah.
That provides that validation and that direction.
So it's not just about being nice, it's strategic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's about understanding what makes your team tick
Right.
and then tailoring your approach.
Yeah.
The thesis actually argues that this kind of positive reinforcement,
Uh-huh.
done right, of course,
Right.
can be way more effective than just like, dangling a bigger paycheck.
And interesting.
It creates this culture of, like, continuous learning
Right.
and improvement.
I like that.
Okay, so we've got these millennial leaders, right? And they're, like, killing it with the positive feedback, this whole human-centered approach. It's really cool.
Yeah, it's refreshing.
But let's be real for a sec.
Okay.
It's not always, smooth sailing in the virtual world.
Definitely not. It definitely comes with its own set of challenges.
Totally. And this thesis, it doesn't shy away from those challenges.
Right.
It was actually really interesting to see, like, what they identified as the biggest hurdle
Yeah.
for these leaders.
Yeah.
So, like, hit me with it.
Okay.
What was the #1 pain point?
So the thesis found that geographic dispersion was a major, major challenge
Okay.
for a lot of these leaders, which makes sense, right?
Totally. You're
Yeah.
juggling time zones,
Exactly.
communication styles,
Yeah.
sometimes even languages.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a lot.
It's a lot to handle.
It is, and here's where it gets really interesting, I think.
Okay.
The thesis found that men and women, they often experience these cultural barriers in very, very different ways.
Okay, now that is super interesting.
Yeah.
Tell me more about those, like, different perspectives.
So the women who were surveyed, they were much more likely to talk about, like, the challenges of overcoming social prejudices.
Okay.
Things like unconscious bias
Right.
or assumptions about women in leadership roles.
Especially in tech,
Right.
which, let's be real, still has a long way to go.
For sure. Yeah. It's those invisible hurdles that women, unfortunately, still often have to deal with.
Exactly. Even when you're not, in the same room.
Even in the virtual world, it's still there.
Yeah.
And then, on the other hand, the men in this study,
Yeah.
they tended to focus more on the, I guess, like the practicalities
Oh.
of managing cultural diversity.
Gotcha.
So, like, navigating different communication styles,
Right.
how some cultures are, like, super strict about deadlines
Yeah.
and others are a little bit more fluid.
It's so real.
And even just, like, understanding cultural norms
Yeah.
around, like, giving feedback, for example.
It's so different everywhere you go.
It really is.
It's fascinating.
Yeah, so it's not that one is, like, bigger than the other.
Right.
It's just that they're, like, different parts of this big, complex puzzle.
Yeah, of leading diverse teams
Exactly.
across, not just cultures, but distances.
Right. And I think what we can take away from all of this is that there's no magic solution. It's all about, like, being aware of the potential challenges,
Right.
being sensitive to how people experience them differently,
Right.
and then just being adaptable.
Yes. It's that adaptability.
Yeah, exactly.
Like the thesis is saying, that's the real test of leadership
Mm-hmm.
in this crazy, ever-changing world.
It's true. It's not about having all the answers.
Yeah.
It's about being open to new ideas, new ways of working, new ways of leading.
I love that. It's about embracing the journey, right, with all of its ups and downs.
Exactly. That's what makes it fun.
Exactly.
Oh,
So as you're out there, navigating the world of virtual teams,
yeah.
just remember, it's all about blending those, like, timeless leadership skills, communication and empathy, with the willingness to adapt
Yes.
to the opportunities and the challenges of this increasingly virtual world.
It's a brave new world out there.
It really is. And hey, if you ever find yourself, feeling a little lost in the digital wilderness,
Yeah.
just remember those millennial leaders down in Argentina.
Right.
Absolutely killing it
They're leading the way.
with those positive vibes
Exactly.
and that focus on the human element.
Because at the end of the day, that's what matters.
It really is.
Yeah.
And who knows, maybe their playbook holds the key to unlocking your virtual team's full potential, right?
You never know.
You never know. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, and until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep leading with intention.